bring in Goldy Hyder, President and CEO of the Business Council of Canada. Goldy, thanks for being here. Your thoughts on what we just heard from the Minister and the move to involve the Industrial Relations Board?
Well, I applaud her, Minister Freeland, and the Prime Minister for ultimately putting the national interest above all else. You know, when a government chooses to send something to binding arbitration, it usually comes about after a long process where two parties who, and this is the nature of negotiations, can agree to disagree about some fundamental things, are at an impasse. Pretty much that's where we were. And when a government sends something to binding arbitration, it's not making a choice. It's not picking one or the other. It's basically saying, look, there's a broader interest here, and that is the interest of the national interest of our economy. To quote the minister herself, now is no time to be taking risks with our economy, and I couldn't agree with her more. And so this is the nature of negotiations, and I think many Canadians, many businesses, particularly those small businesses who for years have been whacked with, COVID, to the tariffs, to port strikes, to rail strikes, to, now airplane flight strikes, they needed some relief. And I think the government saw that and acted wisely and reasonably quickly enough to prevent any further damage to our economy.
Of course, the other side of this is that, people would say that the government is overextending, using Section 107 to essentially bring workers back on the job without really giving them a chance to vote, without really giving them their say. The Jobs Minister was asked there by one of the members of the media, is the government anti-union? What would you say to that?
Well, look, I think it's hard to say that when two parties have been in conversation for 8 months, have made progress. Where ultimately, look, I think Canadians are smart enough to know that if a deal is bad for business, it's going to be bad for everybody else. So we get to a place where clearly two sides are disagreeing on how it is that they're going to be able to progress, and that's why these tools exist. They exist at a point of impasse where a neutral arbitrator, someone who can look at the facts on both sides and be able to say, look, I got to bring this to a conclusion. We've got to bring this to a conclusion. Let's find a path forward based on evidence, based on facts, not based on emotions, but based on facts. And look, I'm a traveler. I'm an Air Canada customer as much as I am of any other airline. Tremendously appreciate the services that flight attendants provide. We know that there were legacy issues. I believe the company made progress on that. Now we're at a stage where whatever agreement is made has to make business sense, not just for the company, but for Canadians, because otherwise it means less options on your flights. It means less flights. It means less planes. And frankly, it could mean less jobs. And that's the last thing anyone wants to see. And certainly it's the last thing our economy can afford as we continue to battle the challenges that we're facing from tariffs and just more broadly, some of the challenges we've created upon ourselves here in Canada.
All right, Goldy, thank you. It was great chatting with you today.
Thank you for having me.
That is Goldy Hyder, President and CEO of the Business Council of Canada.